Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Pollinator here at Studio B at Wilson's Orchard, and it's really a great day for me because we have one of the most special guests we'll ever have on. Jack Neuzil has been like a founding father to this place ever since we've started Wilson's Orchard, or we acquired it in 2009, and Jack didn't come with the deal. Okay, so Jack Neuzil, and we'll get him talking here shortly, but I feel it necessary to sort of preamble this a little bit in how we came to know Jack. So we moved to this area, and it'd always been a lifetime dream of mine to tear down a barn, and so I got to looking, and there was a barn here that was pretty close to a development. So I thought, well, that barn's going to have to go. And so I made an inquiry, and they said, yeah, that barn probably needs to come down, and yeah, you could probably take it down. Well, at this time, I was still traveling overseas quite a bit, and I said, well, it'd be a couple of months before I could get it down, and they said, well, that's okay, you know. And we planned on that, and then just a couple weeks later, I get this call, and like, well, I heard you're going to tear that barn down, and we got to have it down like next week. And I said, well, there ain't no way, you know, I'm gone every 2 weeks out of the month, I'm overseas. And they said, well, you know, we got to have it down. And then the next thing I know, I get this call from this crazy guy, Dick Schwab, and Jack Neuzil was right there, and they said, hell, we'll tear that barn down. We'll help you, you know. We'll just go and tear it down. And I said, no, I want to save the wood. We got lots of barns. You don't have to worry about that. So that was my first introduction to Jack Neuzil. And ever since that, I would say that the continuing theme with Jack Neuzil is, let's get this shit done. Let's just, God dang it, let's go. Let's do this. And so that's my introduction to Jack Neuzil. He's Mr. Let's get it done. I think he's been doing that all his life. Jack, it's just fantastic to have you here. And tell us a little bit about what it was. The Neuzil family is like notorious in this area. You guys been around for how long you guys go back in this area?
65, I think it is, or something like that. They came over from Czechoslovakia.
In 1965?
No, 1860.
All right. 1865?
Well, somewhere around there. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah. Did you get kicked out of Czechoslovakia? Or?
I suppose they got starved out. That's the reason anybody left, you know.
Yeah.
And I think they first settled in Ohio, and then they eventually came out here because the land was available.
Uh-huh.
And so they settled here, and we're farmers, although my dad's family were all professional people, although he was not. He had a grocery store, but his brothers were doctors, veterinarians, and priests, but they had a grocery store up on Dodge Street. Well, when the Depression hit, they lost it. And so they had to move to the farm that my mother's parents had owned, which was out by West High School right now. It was 80 acres there. And so they moved there in 1930 when I was born. And I have six I'm in the middle of seven, so 3 older and 3 younger. And we lived there on a farm until my uncle, the one that, my mother's brother, the younger one, he wanted to farm it. Well, we were helping farmers. It was a dairy farm, you know, and so we milk cows, and, you know, when you start to school, there's your cow, you know, that's your cow to milk, you know. And, of course, you couldn't get all the milk. You had to leave the calves to get the rest of the milk. But, you know, back in those days, butter was the big thing. And milk you just threw away, but you separated it and saved the butter, or saved the cream, and then you took that to town, and that's what they made the butter out of. And it didn't matter if it was spoiled. It doesn't have to be fresh to make butter. It can be a week old, you know.
So how did they transport? How did you guys take it into?
Well, they had a pickup, a Model T pickup, Ford pickup. And they'd put it on these barrels and put it in there and take it into town when they got full, I guess, on Dubuque Street in Iowa City. There was a creamery there. I can't remember the name of it. And then you'd take your barrel in, and then you'd get paid, and then, and take it back, and that's kind of how the story of.
Is that the one on Dodge Street there, that the Roberts, or wasn't it Roberts, that went out of business here not long ago? Right up there by the Hy-Vee? Was that the same? Was that kind of a newer plant, though, I think, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know that. But anyway, that's the story.
So you guys did some dairy farming back in the day?
Well, we just milk cows. We didn't have a whole bunch. And my dad, after they lost the grocery store, he stayed on and was a butcher at one of the grocery stores. He went over and became the butcher at one of the grocery stores. And so that's how they happened. And that's the story I tell you about the connection between the quarry here that used to have the Dingleberry Quarry. I can remember my uncle telling the story when we were at a farm one day, telling it how he used to drive the still to the Dingleberry Quarry, and they'd take it from farm to farm and make alcohol. And he kept it, and the farm where we lived, they had a milk house, and they'd keep the barrels of milk and butter in there, or cream, and they'd store the alcohol in there. So if the sheriff or somebody came out, they would just cream it. It's nothing. But and then they'd move the quarry. And I remember him telling about how they would make him drive it because he was like 14 or 15 years old then, and so he'd take the back roads at night with the lights out on his pickup and drive the back roads and get around and come up over through, I think, Mahaffey Bridge, and come back down to here and someplace on Dingleberry Quarry. I don't know where.
Well, so the Dingleberry brothers were just across the road here. This is Dingleberry Road, named after them. And my understanding is they ran the stills, and there's quite a story about them, the two brothers. I don't think either of them ever got married, and there's quite an interesting photo that we can post where they were building the Highway 1. They were extending it or fixing it up, evidently. This is back in the Prohibition times, and they had at the corner of Dingleberry Road and Highway 1 there was a guest house. And what did they call those? Not mule strappers, mule skinners. That's what they called them, mule skinners. Those were the guys that worked down the road.
Yeah.
And they would go down to the Dingleberry brothers and get their hooch. And they would get all tanked up, and then they couldn't work as good. So the foreman down there made a deal with the Dingleberries that they would only sell to these guys on Saturdays because Sundays were off. And they got kind of angry about that, and so they turned them in, supposedly, to the whoever the modern equivalent of the TTB was, and they raided them, and there's pictures of them busting up the stills right over here. Now, rumor, and I've heard two different stories about because they broke one still, and they busted up a bunch of barrels of hooch, but there was two stills. One story is that the other still is on the farm that your nephew Steve lives on. And the other one is that there's a still buried on this place in the cistern. So I don't know what's true. We've never dug it up, but we should do that at some point.
I don't know how big they were. They must have been small enough to put on the back of a little Ford Model T truck that they hauled. I don't know how they did it. Did they use corn, right?
They used corn.
I don't know what kind of fire they had, but they had some way.
I guess it'd have been wood, right?
I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I'll
anyway,
have to show you that picture at some point.
Anyway, that's my only connection with this. But I really enjoyed helping you out here. It was so much fun coming out here, and with all the kids and everything, it was really a treat. I mean.
So Jack has done a number of different things here, but one of the things that he was notorious for was he was our tractor driver, and he would drive, just trailer load after trailer load of kids, and then mysteriously they'd get down to the creek. Tell them about how that trip would go.
Well, we'd go up and we'd start across the creek and we'd get the trailer into the water and my tractor would stop.
Mysteriously.
It just stopped every time in the top, and I'd say, "Oh, Bessie." The tractor was Bessie, of course. That's what you call it. And they said, "What are we going to do?" But I said, "Don't get off because the alligator's up there. You see that alligator up there, Henry?" And it was a log laying in the creek up there, And I just stay on the trailer. And they say, "Well, how are we going to get it started?" And I say, "Well, we have to talk to Bessie and say, 'Go, Bessie, go.' Now, I'll count to 3, and you say, 'Go, Bessie, go,' and maybe it'll start." So I'd say 1, 2, 3, and they'd say, "Go, Bessie, go." And I said, "That's not loud enough. I have to do it different." So they'd do it a couple times, and finally I'd turn the key on and start it up again, and away we would go. But it's so amazing. I saw a number of times I've been confronted with people that remember it when they were younger kids, It was usually the 7, 8, 9-year-olds, And they'd say, "Don't you remember me? You took me on a ride." And I'd say, "No, I can't remember." But people, they remembered it. It was quite a treat for them to go through the quarry.
They still remember that trip across the creek. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you still go across there with it, or?
Well, this year we haven't done tractor
can't
rides,
do it,
but we expect next year to be back at it, and I know that I mean we've had kids cry because they're worried about the alligators in the creek, and then of course Jack, just talking about a log in the creek being an alligator wasn't good enough, so then he went out and built an alligator, and so we floated alligators in the creek. The last one you built was actually quite lifelike. And,
kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, and he's made bats. Jack. It should be noted that Jack Neuzil is famous as the dinosaur guy. Tell him about why that is. What's the dinosaur connection?
Well, let's see how'd that happen. My nephew had found a bone up in Lake Okoboji there, and he brought it to him and said he had this dinosaur bone. And I said, "You didn't have a dinosaur bone because we didn't have dinosaurs in Iowa." But I kept it, I had it, and then I was friends with one of the famous dinosaur guys, Phil Curry, and I showed it to him one time, and he said, "Yeah, that's a dinosaur bone. It's a real one." So it was the first dinosaur bone. Well, anyway, that got started, and the next thing I know, I don't remember how it was. They were at my mother's house. The grandkids were there, and they were cutting out cardboard dinosaurs. And they wanted me. I said, "I'll go make you some wooden ones." So I went home that week, and next Saturday at the football games, because we lived next to the stadium down there, and I made some out of and brought them, and they just had a big time playing with them. And my sister was there, who taught at the Braille School in Vinton. And she said her kids like dinosaurs. I said, "Well, I'll make them some." So I made them about 20 different kinds and gave them to them. And I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. They said they didn't want them anymore. They caused too much trouble. So the Solon library lady said she'd take them. So I guess said, "They're yours." And so I gave them there. And then pretty soon people started calling up and saying, "Can we borrow them?" The teachers, grade school teachers, heard about it, and it just grew from there. And I just kept making them until we got. Well, and then I made some big cardboard ones, like the ones you have out there out of cardboard. But most of them are wooden ones, and I probably have over 100. I don't know how many, but
and they're not the same. They're different.
Everyone's different.
Everyone is different,
and they're all out of native wood. It's all wood that I got from Dick Schwab. I'd get the wood from a sawmill, and I'd plane them and then cut them. And I'd look in the book and see a picture of one, and then I'd try to make it like that,
These are truly remarkable, moving parts. And
yeah, they like the moving parts, the jaws that move, and so on and so forth. And so I was afraid somebody's going to get their finger pinched someday in the mouth when they so I didn't want them anymore, so I gave them to the library. I said they're responsible. If somebody gets pinched, it's not me. They belong to the library. So that's where they are right now.
But you used to travel around with these things, right?
Oh, yeah.
School to school.
Oh.
And
It'd be busy all year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd take them for a week, I'd leave them for 2 weeks, and then I'd go back and talk to them about dinosaurs. And that's where I got to meet some of these real famous dinosaur guys. Phil Curry up in Canada, and Pete Larson out in wherever he is out in Colorado, and the one that found Tyrannosaurus shoe. And I got invited to go on some dinosaur digs and dig up some bones. I got some real dinosaur bones that I dug up, and so I could tell all these stories, but I can't do it anymore. I can't remember the names of them. I mean, there's only hundreds of them, but I would imagine probably close to 30 to 40,000 kids at least saw the dinosaurs in 25 years. I mean, I'd go to schools, it'd be 300 kids.
wow.
In there, and they'd talk to them about dinosaurs and all that stuff. And then I'd take them to the next school, and I had some friends that helped. We'd load them on their trucks and take them to the next school. And we did that for 25 years. So I wish I would have kept track. I kept thinking, well, this isn't going to, it was just a little thing. It's not going to last. Well, it just kept going and going and going. And all over eastern Iowa, as far as Illinois, Wisconsin, some Minnesota,
Lord.
First I never charged anything. And later on I decided, well, this isn't too good. So I charged each school a book. They had to buy us a book. And the kids in that school could sign their name in the back of the book, and then we'd put it in our Solon library. And I didn't care whether the book was 99 cents or $25. It didn't care. Just whatever it was the idea that free stuff is no good. If it's free, it's no good. But so you got to charge. So that's I got the idea that you have to charge something.
Which reminds me, you also built a bunch of these little portable libraries, right? What do they call them? Free libraries,
Yeah.
lending libraries or
I
something.
built one of the first ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Little free libraries, yeah.
You helped build the Solon Library. You did some of the
we're
carpentry
involved
work
in
on that.
Yeah.
And you and Dick Schwab, I do believe, have built any number of other buildings around.
Well, his barns, I helped him on his barns out there, and so.
And we should post a link to that because there's quite a tour of you showing off one of those barns. But those are big round barns, quite interesting.
Yeah, it was. It was quite a project.
Yeah.
But that's how we got in. And I remember how you got involved with Wilson's. Do you remember that, how we did that? I had you come to the library, and you were going to talk about China, your experience in China. And somehow the Wilsons heard about it, and they were there, and that's how you got.
Well, that's true. I forgot all about that. Yeah, the Wilsons did come to that, and yeah.
And you talked about China and your experiences over there, and the Wilsons came, and that's how you met them, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I met them before that, but yeah, they came, and it's really. Part of that, well, our first experience was together with barns. I mean, I remember tearing down barns and with Dick Schwab and you and me and whatever kids we could roust up that weren't too afraid of climbing on roofs and such what as that. Yeah. So I also remember a story. You told me a story one time about an uncle or somebody that got electrocuted. How the hell did that happen? Tell us about it.
Well, it was on this same farm that we lived west of Iowa City, my mother's family's farm, and they were plowing or doing something in the fall, two of the brothers, and one of them went over to either he had an oil can there or his drinking can there, went over to the fence where they had put, and he grabbed the fence and he got electrocuted, just right there. And his brother then stopped, came over, and he went over to see and pull him off, and he got electrocuted. Then there was a man going down the highway, or the road. It wasn't the highway in those days, it's a gravel road. And he saw him up there, so he went up and he got it too.
And what happened?
Well, a high line had dropped on the fence
Oh.
down the road a ways. And they had, of course, in those days, they had wooden posts. They didn't have steel posts. So it electrified the wire.
It didn't ground it out.
It didn't ground it out because of the thing, but it was down the road, I don't know, 100 yards or so far. Nobody knew about it. And nobody knew what it was until finally somebody came by and just barely touched them and realized what it was. So then they called the power company in Corville there and shut the power off. And I remember telling the story how they didn't want to do it. They said, "Who do you think you are telling us to shut the power off?" Well, ended up, in a big lawsuit, and that's when they moved off the farm and they built a house on Melrose Avenue, and then that's when we were able to move into the farmhouse out there. But yeah, that was quite an adventure.
Yeah, holy smokes. Another thing you told me about one time, and it's always hard to know what you're telling is true or not true, but you told me something about back in the day when there was a big freeze and picking up ducks or something about birds raining down from the sky because they got froze to death. Is that true, or is that just you?
I think I must have made that up.
You probably made that up.
I must have made that.
Fair enough. Okay.
Well, that could have been up, and of course this was the road out here in front, Highway 1. That was the road that went from Dubuque to Iowa City, and that was the first highway there, and that used to be a pretty well-traveled road, but it wasn't much of a road back in those days.
Yeah, they called it Dillon's Furrow.
Dillon's Furrow. He plowed a furrow, took the horses and a plow and plowed a furrow from Dubuque to Iowa City.
Yeah, and that became the road, right?
It became the road, and that's why it goes the way it does. But they kind of straightened it out a little bit in a few places, but it's pretty much the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you did something else. You went to you worked in the prisons. You worked at Kirkwood.
Yeah, I don't know if you want.
Yeah.
I went to.
Well, first let's start with the Navy, because you were in the Navy for a while, right?
Yeah, I went to university schools in Iowa City. They don't have them anymore, but they were there. That's where I went to schools. And then I worked in a cabinet shop for a year after school. And then the guy that was the basketball coach at City High went over to Northern Illinois State Teachers as the basketball coach. And he came over and talked to me and see if I'd come and play basketball. You wouldn't believe it that I played basketball.
You were a basketball player?
Basketball player. So
no
I went over there to Northern Illinois State Teachers College, and the first year I broke my arm right away, and so that was kind of the end of it, and I never went back out after the other years, but I stayed there for 3 years, and that's when the Korean War was going on, and the draft board said, "You're going as soon as you get done with school, you're going." Well, a guy I acquainted with there at school, he said, "Let's go in and take the test for the Navy, see if we can go to the officers candidate school." I said, "What do I got to lose?" So we went to Chicago and took the test, and lo and behold, I told the draft board that I did it, and they said, "Well, you got till the 20th of June. If you don't you're getting your notice to go in the Army." So I called them or sent them something, told them if they wanted me, they had to take me by and sure enough, 20th of June, I got the letter telling me I could go to officers candidate school.
Where was that?
That was in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
So I went there for 4 months. Yeah, I went there in January. Wait a minute, I went there in the fall and got done in January, and then I got a commission, and my older brother, said, "What you want to ask for is you want to ask for an LST." That's what he was on, an LST that landed on Iwo Jima. And he said, "That's what you want, and you want to be an engineering officer." So when they ask you what you wanted to do, that's what I put down, engineering officer on an LST. And
What's LST?
landing ship tank.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those, goes in and opens the bow doors and drops the rank, and the tanks come off, and so on and so forth. They don't have them anymore, but anyway, sure enough, that's what I got. So I spent 3 years on there as all over the Far East. And we were in Vietnam. It was Indochina. Then the next day it became Vietnam when they left. We were taking the refugees that wanted to go from the north to the south, and we'd haul them on there. We could put 2,000 of them, open the bow doors and bring them on, and then we'd take them to Saigon and go back and get another load. And then the next day, the last load we hauled, it became North and South Vietnam. It divided it, and that's when the thing went into effect. So.
And that was it then? Couldn't take any more?
No, we couldn't take any more of those, but we were involved in some other Chinese operations in Ta-Cheng Islands. We evacuated some there, and we spent all our time. 3 years, I spent my time in the Far East, going to all those ports: Philippines, Tokyo, Japan, Hong Kong. It was a wonderful experience,
Oh, I bet.
You couldn't.
Kid out of Iowa City, Iowa, seeing the world like that?
Yeah, never been to Chicago, some farm kid, and here you see what the world is all about. I mean, you can see these people that, they had everything they had. And I remember hauling these Chinese people one time, and these women they had their feet tied up when they were, they were
bound
just like,
feet, yeah.
And they had to carry them because their feet, you read about that, but you never see it.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay for all the experiences. I mean, like I say, we were at Iwo Jima. We landed our ship at Iwo Jima. We took an Honest John rocket out there and landed it just like they did 10 years before. Same place that my brother was when he landed on a ship on an LST in Iwo Jima.
Wow.
So that's quite an experience.
So what was your impression about over there, and I mean how that compared with over here? At that time, this was the 50s, right?
Yeah, this is in the 50s, yeah.
Or 60s, maybe. 60s, yeah.
It just takes you back,
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, I think about the toilets, were just troughs on the road, and they just use those troughs. They'd squat down and do their business and, just run the side of the street, They didn't have, I remember hauling those people on our ship, and they'd stand on the toilets instead of sitting on them. They didn't know what toilets were. Sure. They would stand on them and break them off. Had a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Well, but it makes you appreciate Iowa more than anything. I mean, I could go. I came back after the war, and then after my term, and I taught school 3 years in high school, and then I went to the prison in Anamosa and spent 6 years there setting up programs. And then when Kirkwood started in 1960. Whenever it was, I can't even remember that now, but I started there when they first started and spent 25
So what did you do in the prisons? What kind of program did you work
Well, I set up an auto body program, auto mechanics, a meat cutting program, a butchering program, cooking, baking, and we'd spend, these inmates had to work in these different places, not the body shop, but the kitchen and all those, so we would have them spend 2 hours doing classroom kind of work so that they would know, instead of just being a cook, they would know what it is so they could get a job when they left the prison. They could get a job as a cook or as a meat cutter if that was the area, or a baker. And same way with the body shop or the machine shop or welding. I think I tried to have programs and all those things. I don't know if they still do that or not, but
was the farm still going up at Anamosa when you were there?
Yeah.
Because that's quite a barn up there. That limestone barn, and the prison itself is a work of art.
Yeah, we had Well, they'd raise the hogs, and then they'd bring them in and butcher them. And I don't know if they do that anymore, but they'd butcher the hogs and the cattle that they would actually eat there. It was
Did they raise row crops and stuff up there?
Yeah, they had some row crops.
Yeah.
I had a heavy equipment program. I got some government surplus equipment from World War, bulldozers and backhoes and a scraper, and we made some ponds on the farms so we could put fish in them. And
Oh, is that right?
fish in the ponds. Yeah, that was kind of fun. So, and we'd teach the guys how to run the bulldozers and those things. That was it was interesting.
Yeah. So from there you went to Kirkwood.
Yeah.
And did a VOTEC. You helped set up the VOTEC program there,
All
right?
the trade and what we called trade and industrial programs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we helped set those up. And
So Kirkwood is the local community college
the
here.
community college in Cedar Rapids, yeah.
Yeah, and that's become quite a big program up there.
yeah,
Now they do wind energy and
they have
all
a
sorts
lot
of
of
stuff,
that,
truck driving and
Yeah.
So what was when you were growing up and, before you went to the Navy, what was agriculture like? I mean, what was going on? I guess tractors had come in, right?
Yeah, it was tractors. Well, even when when I was growing up, they had a tractor on the farm, and they had this baler. But most everybody had tractors and cultivators that would mount on the tractors, and they would have a plow but they would pull behind the tractor.
And what were people growing? What?
Corn.
Mostly corn?
And soybeans didn't come in until, what was that, about 1960?
Oh, okay.
I think when soybeans came in, you rotated three crops. You had hay, corn, and you rotated it so you could get.
So you would be in corn one year, and then you might have a hay field for a couple years or something, and then go back into corn or something.
Yeah. Then maybe 2 years they'd grow corn, and then they'd plant it into hay. And of course, everybody had horses, and those, even though the tractors came in, they still had.
They had draft animals?
Yeah, they still had horses.
Yeah.
And the farms all worked together. I mean, there'd be maybe 5 or 6 farms that all went together when they did the thrashing. They'd go from one farm to the other and do the thrashing and do that kind of stuff. And then all the farmers would help out as they would do that. Yeah. We were in county home was in our crew. And that was fun to go there because they always had the best meals at the county home.
Oh, is that right?
They really fixed the meals. Oh,
no
boy.
kidding. Who fixed them?
Well, the people that they had.
Okay.
County homes in those days were for people that didn't have any place to go. I mean, instead of just living on the street, they went to what was known as the county home, or they were, I don't know what you call them, homeless people, but lost their family or something. And so they'd have, I don't know, 50 or 60 people lived there at the home. It's out there by West High School in Iowa City.
Yeah,
And,
it's still there. I mean, the county's still
they
got
do.
it.
They do something else in there. I don't know if they do gardens or something out there.
I think that's right.
But they raised everything that they used. I mean, they raised chickens and that they ate, and all the vegetables and stuff. They grew them right there on the county home.
Yeah, because it's I think they have 100 and maybe a couple hundred acres out there.
I think they probably do.
Big barn and yeah.
But it was always fun to go because they had when we went to there to do the thrashing and whatnot, they had the best meals. My gosh, they'd have pies and goose sandwiches and
Really?
it was really great.
Well, it sounds.
Yeah, that was
And there would be 50, 60 people living there, and
they're not men and women both.
Yeah.
But everybody, did something. They all worked, even though they were just limited. Maybe they were on crutches or something, but everybody had a job to do,
Poor Farm. That's another
Yeah,
name. I mean, pretty much every county had one around here, I think.
Poor Farm. Yeah, Johnson County Poor Farm.
Yeah.
County home. Yeah.
County home. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you did Kirkwood, and then and you also are a patent holder for New Air, the heat exchanger, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about how that came about.
Well,
Was that when you were at Kirkwood, or you were?
yeah, we were building. One of the projects programs at Kirkwood was to build homes, carpentry, teach carpentry, and we would build a home every year and then sell it. Well, one of the problems we had was you could build a home and make it so tight by insulating it and having it so tight you didn't get any fresh air. And so it didn't have any. If you brought in fresh air, which you had to live in there, then you had to heat it so you were right back to where you started from. So I came up with the idea of take the exhaust air and blowing it outside, but running it through a series of tubes that would transfer the heat to the air coming in. So it would preheat the air coming in, but giving them fresh air, but not having to heat it from zero like it was outside. We could bring it in at 50 degrees, so it only had to heat it from 50 to 70,
Right.
which is a considerable amount. So that's what started it. And the first one I invented went around the basement outside of the house. The tube went around the outside and the ground. It was an earth tube heat exchanger where the new air went in and went around the foundation of the house and got preheated and brought into the house, and the exhaust air went around in another tube and warmed the ground back up. And that was the first one. So I applied for a patent, and lo and behold, I got it. And so then the next one was a nested one. It was a big tube. I think it was 18 inches in diameter and had 3-inch tubes inside. And that was the one that hung in the air in a barn or hog house or stuff. And so I patented that too and got the patents. I don't know why, but I did. And so Dick Schwab sold it for me. So they're still making them.
Yeah. And I think what they call now ERVs our house has one, every tight house would have one, because like you said, you don't want to be bringing in completely cold air or completely hot air. You want tempered air coming in and recovering the heat out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that
really.
was. But I'm not much of a salesman. I couldn't sell anything.
Oh, is that right?
You had to want to buy it.
Uh-huh.
If you didn't want to buy it, I didn't. But I did that for a couple of years after I retired from Kirkwood. But then we finally sold it to these people that still make it. And so the other one, the one that was underground, the what they call geothermal now, is underground. So
there's a guy out in Nebraska that has a big greenhouse and uses that concept. He brings in air and basically just runs it. I think his are, I want to say they're 8 feet deep or so. And he brings it just through that corrugated drain pipe and then up into a greenhouse and then exhausts the air. I think he exhausts it just like you said, back into the ground, but maybe separately. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But he raises citrus and all this stuff out in western Nebraska.
I know I sold some heat exchangers out there. I don't remember where now. I had several hundred. I've sold several hundred of them, but I used to keep track, but I don't know where they are now. But mostly in the Midwest, that's where they need it. In livestock buildings, because the livestock generate enough heat. But the smell, is bad, but you can bring in fresh air to them.
Yeah. So now, what do you do? What's your days like now? I called you yesterday. You were cracking hickory nuts.
Yeah, I got some friends brought me some hickory nuts, 3 or 4 gallons. I sit around all morning doing nothing, and then I don't have time for anything in the afternoon. like I say, maybe we can cut some apples and dry them. I'd be happy to try that.
Yeah, yep. We're gonna put him on that project, and I mean, normally Jack would be our greeter here at the orchard. So if you're next year we get rid of all this COVID crap, you come out here, you're gonna meet Jack Neuzil face to face, and you can talk to him if you've got a mind to. Now I could say that there's I've witnessed this myself, where a kid will get a little mouthy and Jack will say, what's your name, or what are you doing here? Give you a little bit of grief, and most kids will give it right back to him. Yeah.
Well.
And the other thing I'll mention about Jack Neuzil is he gave us one of the best gifts we've ever had. He gave us a mother of vinegar that had been in his family for quite some years, I understand, maybe even generations. And we use that mother vinegar to propagate our own vinegar. So that's a continuation of the Neuzil vinegar.
Yeah, that was from my grandmother, the one that there's 2 sons were killed, but they always had vinegar and apples, and of course everybody in those days had apples in their yard, and even in town, and you'd squeeze apples and make apple juice, and they'd make vinegar. All you need is that mother. And
so how did the pressing go? Did people have a press that they shared between themselves, or each
Yeah,
family?
A lot of times they did, but a lot of people had their own. We had our own, and
Yeah.
a lot of people had their own. But squeezing apples was they had, there's different sizes of them. I don't know. Of course, apples now, to me, you just got 3 kinds of apples: red, yellow, and green. That's.
Yeah.
I can't help you because somebody wants to know what kind of apple it is. I said, well, is it red, yellow, or green? So you've got too many. How many? You got over 100 now or something?
Still over 100, yep.
I can't remember.
Well,
I'm not any good.
You're damn good. So people would press their own, make vinegar. They made cider, I assume, as well.
Yeah. They'd make cider. And then put some aside in a jug or something. And you had to put cotton in one of those glass tubes to make it breathe or whatever in there to keep the bugs from going in it.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't remember how I got it. I know my mother had it, my parents had it, and I got it from them, but it came from my grandmother. I know it's been in the family for who knows how long. I mean, I don't know.
You still making vinegar?
Yeah, a little bit. I still got some. Last year I got some from you, some apple cider, and I guess it's down in the basement there someplace. I'll have to go down and see.
Yeah. See how it's coming.
Well, a lot of people drink it. It's a big. I remember coming out here and people would want to buy some to drink. They said they drink an ounce a day or something.
Something like that. Yep, like a teaspoon to a tablespoon a day. Yep, my grandmother swore by it. Yep, she'd drink a tablespoon a day.
Yeah.
Yep. She lived to be 99 and fit as a fiddle. And
well, I don't know why I quit drinking. I did it for a while. Then I just didn't think about it anymore and just quit doing it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start up again. Maybe I'll make another 10 years, you suppose.
Oh, I think you'll make more than 10. You're too ornery to go any quicker than that. Jeez Louise.
Well, I'm only 90 now. So.
Yeah. I mean, you got another 20, 30 years in you.
Oh, I doubt that.
Well, Jack, it's just been great to have you on and share some stories and reminisce a bit, and we'll do this again, but hopefully under better circumstances.
Well, I enjoyed probably coming out here more than anything because it was just so much fun to be around these people. They're so enthusiastic, they just love the idea of coming out, and I hope you continue to do it.
Oh, we plan on it, and we plan on having you as the greeter and the sort of official welcomer to the orchard. We just, like I say, this year has been a bit of a stretch, but next year you better be ready for work. 'Cause,
okay.
The other thing is we're going to be open more of the year, so we're gonna be open most of the year round anymore.
Oh, really?
So come strawberry season, we're going to expect you out here. Hopefully this thing is by us by then.
Oh, I used to pick strawberries too. That was hard work.
Yeah?
Bending over, that's work.
Well, I also remember that there was some guy, I think he had the same name as you, was going to talk to me about a strawberry picking cart. You was going to, yeah, I'd never seen the plans for this thing. But
I was going to make one that you could lay on it and go down the hill and pick the strawberries and pull it back up and go down and put them in the thing. But I don't know, it just never got off the ground.
I mean, we really haven't done justice to the way your mind works, because just one little example is one day I got Jack Neuzil arriving. He had this Prius. We called it his Prius pickup. And so he drives in with this thing, and he's got this big black paper mache thing. And I said, "What in the hell have you got there?" He said, "This is a bat. You got to put this up." So this thing has a wingspan of probably 7 to 8 feet, and it's probably 4 feet long. And the wings, of course, move, and it's a fierce looking thing. So he says, "You got to put this up." I said, "Well, I don't have any space." "Yeah, no, we're going to put it right here." So then we finally get it mounted to the ceiling, and the wings are flopping. I said, "Well, what about the wings?" He said, "Well, you got to have a pulley." I said, "What in the heck you need a pulley for?" "Well, you got to have a pulley, and then we're going to hook a string to this. This is how we're going to do this now. We're going to hook a string to each wing, and then we're going to run it up. We're going to join the strings together and run them up to a pulley, and then there's going to be a pulley over here. And whenever a kid comes by, this person over here by the cash register is going to pull on this rope, and the wings are going to flap." So we ended up doing that, and we scared the crap out of some kids, I will say. And that bat has lived here ever since. And
is it still here?
It's still here. Yep. It's we got rid of the pulleys when we redid the barn, but we've still got the bat. And yep. And we got 2 of Jack's dinosaurs.
Those are the cardboard.
Yep. And then every year we bring in his entourage of wooden ones, and in a good year, when we don't have COVID, kids can come out and talk to them about these different dinosaurs and see how many they know. And it's amazing, isn't it? Some of them kids know quite a few of these dinosaurs that you build.
Oh yeah, that is it. When I go around to schools, there'd be a little boy that would come up and sit in the front row. He'd get right down the front row, you know. You want to be careful, because that guy knew his dinosaurs. I remember one of the first schools I went to. He wanted to know what kind of dinosaur that was, and I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Oh, I think that's a Allosaurus or something." And I said, "Well, I don't know. Let me get my book here." And I reached around to get my book, and he said, "Page 195." So, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing. But the reason I did it was to create interest so the kids would read. You can't learn unless you have some interest. And if you can get them interested in anything, even if it's a dinosaur, it doesn't matter, horses, birds, but interested in something, then they will read and they will learn. Without an interest, learning just doesn't happen. So there's always a few in that class that were interested in dinosaurs, and I figured if I helped those kids, it was worth it.
Well, I would say there is no greater testament to your impact on people than the fact that everybody that I know credits you with having such a inquisitive mind. I mean, Jack Neuzil is known far and wide for just an insatiable interest in learning about stuff. And it doesn't matter whether it's what's going on in drying apples, or what varieties of apples are out there, or how this machine works, or how you're going to do this, or it's always been a challenge to keep up with you and the quickness of your mind. So I salute you, Jack, and it's great to have you on. And like I say, we get this COVID thing behind. We're going to be looking forward to people far and wide. Hopefully some of them have watched this podcast and wet their whistle to come know you a little bit better, because you're a one of a kind, that's for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paul.
Well, it's great to have you. This is Jack Neuzil, and his wife Fran is a great companion to him, I think, as well, and stories of her own, I'm sure, not the least of which would be how the heck she put up with you for how many years you've been married?
I got married and I got out of the Navy, so that's been 60 some, I suppose.
60 some years.
65, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't keep track of anything anymore, Paul. It's just nothing's there. It's just blank.
Well, I think there's only so much room up there, Jack, and you keep packing stuff in. You're going to have to let some of it go or your head's going to explode. You never know.
It's gone. It's gone.
So this has been another episode of Pollinator. We hope you guys like it. We hope you come back and see us again. Let us know if there's something you want to talk about. But, we're going to just keep charging on with different topics and different people. This area is rich with agricultural history and lore and all kind of characters like this guy, Jack Neuzil. This is part of the thing that makes the world go round, is interesting people doing interesting things, and no better example of that than Mr. Jack Neuzil. So thanks again, Jack. And
thank you, Paul.
All right. Stay well.